All right. Well,
Okay, I'm going to start with, is that okay with you guys?
yeah.
I'm going to take this from your book, Mike. I'm just going to quote, Jesus controlled the quantum realm with his thoughts. He collapsed the possibilities into reality with his mind and controlled the vibrational energy of matter to transform it. You refer to it as hopping the cliff.
Hmm.
And you follow, you said, we can learn to control the vibration, the frequency of matter. In fact, you said even that with some healing, he spoke into people's DNA to change and realign it, releasing God's heart.
Hmm.
And it would seem that that would probably be when, because everyone's always looked forward to this time of massive healings and God change, like the people, God's people changing things on the earth. I think that's probably what you're talking about there. And if you could, like, using your mind to control the vibrational flow of something,
Hmm.
that's different than what you talked about. For example, you have divine health because you have a conscious awareness of divine health. I don't, because I don't have a conscious awareness of it. That's how it appears to me.
Hmm.
Could you just kind of elaborate on that a little bit as far as the mind? And it's going to be through God. In other words, you're not doing it. I appreciate it. Don't think you could walk on water if God didn't give you the mandate to walk on water, even if you were able to, you learn how to do that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think there's two things. There's the general consciousness which we live in, which is the way we perceive the world around us, and how we perceive ourselves within that world, and that frames our reality most of the time. That it's like it's automatic. It's like we don't think about it. That's the problem. It's an automatic response because we've been conditioned to have a framework that fits us into that natural realm framework. And therefore, we just sort of live that way. Whatever happens, happens. And that's the general sense that most people just live with because their consciousness is just tied to the present reality that they've always known. And therefore, they keep getting much the same as they've always got, um, generally speaking. So there's the sense where our consciousness needs to engage a different reality, which is not bounded by what we've experienced, but is bounded, which is not bounded at all, but it's free to pursue the who God made us to be and who we actually are from His perspective, and how we engage the sort of the eternal perspective, which then is not tying us to a one way of thinking about things or just being in this reality and that's it, we're stuck. So we can begin to connect something and expand what the possibilities are, by seeing essentially God's desire really for his original intent and purpose for everything. And we look around and think, well, this isn't it, you know. So, well, what is it? Well, the closer we get to God, the more we know his heart, the more his mind, the conversation that he has, Father, Son, and Spirit, we have access to. It begins to challenge how we see the world and the way in which we see the world and our part to play in the world. And we have a much more active role when we begin to realize our sonship and how our minds have access to the mind of Christ and can be physically rewired because there's some areas of our mind that are put off limits, but also mostly the way we think changing. So we're not limited by our thinking, which is generally bounded by religious thinking or scientific thinking or whatever that thinking might be. So that all that is sort of part of the way we live and in what context we live. Um, and the more you engage with God, the more you see the possibility of changing that context. That we're not stuck in it, that we're supposed to actually see it restored, and where we have opportunity of being involved in that process. But then it's like, how? You know, that's then, okay, I see possibilities, but what am I supposed to do with those possibilities? How can I change them? I saw a really good Facebook little post the other day, and it said something like this: when someone asks me what I do, I tell them I create ripples in the space-time continuum which effectively alter the realities in the third dimension. So I thought, well, that's really cool. So in a sense, what it was saying is we're not slaves to the machine. We actually can begin to change things. And how do we change things is the point. And I think this is where frequency, vibration, conscious observation begins to see those quantum physics perspectives of consciousness and how they're related to choosing realities rather than be subject to them. So in one sense, everything is energy vibrating at a particular frequency, which some of those frequencies appear solid, and some of them not solid, and so it's all about how those frequencies actually are collapsed into solidity or not. And so quantum physics says if the observer makes a conscious choice, then it can affect things at a subatomic level, and that can affect things at a visual level eventually. So how? That's the thing. How do we do it? How do we learn? Well, some of it is based on your thinking not being limited, unrestricted by what's been said is possible from your religious mindset or any scientific mindset, because most of our science that we learned in school was relative, and was all basically the bigger Newtonian science rather than quantum. I mean, I'd never heard of quantum physics, even though this has been around for 100 years. I never heard it when I went to school. And I did physics up to a certain level. I never heard of quantum physics. It was all based on electricity and the stuff which, we can see without, the sort of the stuff we can't see. So I found that once I started to engage God and he started to deconstruct the belief systems which limited me and remove the restrictions of what was possible, then I started to choose realities aligned to what I knew was his desire, and then collapse those possibilities. So what I mean by collapsing is it's almost like I'm looking and there's infinite possibilities in front of me. I've got to choose one. Now most people don't make a conscious choice of one. They just get swept along with life. So they don't make many decisions really based on what their life's going to be or what they're going to do. They just get swept along and decisions get made for them and they sort of go along with it, really. But when you start to see that we have actually the ability to look and choose our decisions and make choices which actually then enable us to see the possibilities of the thing we're choosing manifest, then you start making decisions based on a different reference point. You're coming out of not inevitability but possibility. So once your mind gets expanded somewhat and you're not limited to a linear way of thinking, which is all part of the deconstruction process, then you can start to make choices. So I obviously in this I learned to do that on a basis of different things. And what I found was my mind was free from inevitability. It was like, oh, something's gone wrong. Oh, that's sad. Nothing I can do about that. No, something's gone wrong. Oh, well, I don't like the way it's gone wrong. I'm going to change it then. So I then see, hey, I don't have to be subject to this thing. I can change it. And people might be saying, you can't, but I choose to believe I can. So I'm not going to be limited by what other people say. I'm not going to be limited by their conscious reality. I'm going to start to function out of what I can believe and see and engage. And then I then just start to choose that. Now, this is so much easier when you live from a state of rest. If you're not living from a state of rest, then you're always trying to do something rather than just being. So all this stuff comes out of a state of being rather than a state of anxiety, worry, trying to fear. All those mindsets will just limit you and tie you to inevitability. Whereas when you're at a place of rest and you're filled with love and joy and peace, essentially you begin to choose to align things from the heart of God. So if I don't spend any time engaging with the heart of God, what am I going to make decisions based on? My own understanding, my own memory, my own history. But if I've spent time engaging with the heart of God and I'm beholding him and I look at him, I see all the solutions. I don't see problems. God doesn't have any problems. He just has awesome possibilities of solutions for everything, because that's why he wants to bring good out of everything. Even the bad things, his desire is to bring good out of them, and he has all sorts of possibilities that can bring that about, but we have to cooperate with it. And if we don't cooperate with it, as much as God would love to bring good out of a situation, we just tie into the bad, and we then see the bad manifested, and we just suffer the bad of whatever choice it was, everything else. So our brain and our consciousness, our mind, functions at different states of consciousness. 4 states. Most people function most of the time at a beta wave state, which is the highest frequency that the brain operates in, and it's problem-solving mode, do-it-yourself, fix-it mode. And that operates at 12 megahertz or above. And generally, that's the state that most people walk around in. Their brain is engaging the world around them and trying to ensure safety, security, peace, all the things that you'd like, but you try and secure them by operating from memory, abilities, things that you have, which are tied to what you've learned, all the external things mostly. And most people live their lives like that. Here's a problem, I'm going to try and fix it. How do I fix it? Well, I remember this, or I remember that, or, oh no, I have no idea how to fix it. I'm lost. I'm sunk. But there's another state of consciousness, which is called the alpha wave state of consciousness, which is when your brain slows down and has access to a different level of consciousness. We call it intuition or creativity. And literally, when you close your eyes, and this is why the meditative state is when you close your eyes, you try and shut out all of the externals that are all around you, and you begin to focus on a different level. Now, most people, when they shut their eyes, their mind is still going around like a washing machine. They don't know how to slow down their thinking to engage a different level of consciousness, which then draws on the creative abilities that God has placed within us as sons. We're all made in his image, and all of us have intuition to engage a level of consciousness which is creative rather than out of memory. And that's great. And when you then close your eyes and you begin to come to that, and people sort of learn to meditate and they learn to sort of still and be still. So why do you be still? To know God. That's the reality, but you can try and be still without knowing God. And there are all sorts of techniques that people use to get them to that state where they're meditative and more open to solutions which come not out of their memory, but out of the creative intuition that they are as a person. But that is obviously going to be limited rather than limitless, because God is obviously limitless. And even though he's made us we're still made, in not to be limited without him. That's why we always need him. So there's something that we are, and we can engage that level of consciousness, and people find solutions. That they find creative things. They have intuition starts kicking in. All of a sudden they just know something, they just sense something, and all of a sudden something changes, and the view of life changes, just because they've stopped the continual beta wave stuff that goes on, which creates worry and anxiety and fear, and all those stuff come into that, and they begin to come to a place of more rest. And therefore some things have a different perspective when you're able to just come to that place where you're engaged at a different level of consciousness. And then the next level of consciousness is delta waves, which is sleep, REM sleep, deep sleep. And that goes down to another level of hertz. And most people can only attain that when they sleep. But actually, we're supposed to be able to engage that while we're awake, so that we can live from a state of rest without being asleep, because it's just a state of consciousness. And you can, just as you can engage alpha waves by closing your eyes, and but when you learn to do it, you don't have to close your eyes anymore. So you can learn to engage a state of alpha consciousness while you're awake, while your mind is where your eyes are open and you're looking, because you've just learned to tune down in normal life without having to close your eyes or go into some meditation exercise. You can learn to do that. It's learning to live from rest. And you can take that to a completely different level, in which you can engage consciousness, which is actual rest all the time. But no one's really taught anyone to do it. Most people are teaching people to do it are making a lot of money out of it, using techniques which are effective and do work. There's some very good mindfulness techniques out there which help people with this, but most of them are limited to selfishness, because it's all about having a better life, being happier, being more productive, being more effective, being more efficient. And you'll find all these sort of self-help meditative things are all based around self and you having a happier life. And it might be, well, if you're happier, other people are going to be happier, so that's all good and everyone's happy. But it's limited. So only ever going to be limited because you're only essentially operating within the framework of that present reality, rather than internal reality, which is God and his heart. And then you can engage in theta waves. And theta waves are waves which come from the spirit, if you like. They're coming from a different perspective altogether. And when we were here doing the conference, there was a Chinese couple from Sydney, Australia, and his day job is a sleep therapist. So he's quite familiar with all the sleeping stuff. And I was chatting to him about it a little bit, and it's like, when people sleep, they have different levels of sleep, and then you go into this REM sleep. And lots of people have done sleep studies. So they've measured the activity going on in people's brains while they're asleep. And when people reach delta sleep, which is sort of the REM sleep, it's dreamless sleep. You don't have dreams, you don't have things in there. What they discovered were some people who went to bed and went to sleep with a specific issue that they needed solving, and they weren't frantic about it, but they were able to just put it in the right place when they went to sleep. They found that theta waves actually came into the delta wave sleep, and a lot of those people woke up with the solution just in their mind, because it was able to, and they called it delta wave or theta wave intrusions. Now, I don't think they really understood what it really was, but they were sort of saying, well, that must have come from somewhere. And it came from some level of consciousness which operated at this wavelength. Now, I believe that was it tuning into someone's spirit. And if you then have a relationship with God, the Holy Spirit. So we can find that we can tune into another dimension of solutions than just is possible within our own creativity or within our own minds. But that's what living in dual realms is all about. So my spirit can be connected to the Holy Spirit, to God, and there can be a flow of revelation that comes into my mind that is not coming from within me, but's coming from without, from another dimension, which is what living in dual realms is all about. I'm in that dimension, and that dimension is quantumly entangled with this dimension, and instantly everything from that dimension can be connected to me in this dimension. So again, quantum entanglement, is where I believe we can have a level of consciousness which is drawing from a completely different realm. Now, people who teach these things aren't able to do that. They may be talking about expanded reality and whatever, but without connected to God, they're only looking to draw from the universe or whatever else. But that's all created, and they obviously make up sort of things like the cosmic consciousness, and you can connect to the cosmic consciousness and everything like that. But in reality, they're not. You'll find that most of those people are only solving problems around the basics of life. What to eat, what to wear, where to live, how to be happy, how to have provision, those basic things. They're not really connecting to creation or seeing the possibilities of our sonship being revealed to creation and creation responding to us. So, yeah, I think there's a lot in all these things that we can learn. And there are some very good meditative techniques that you can learn that are very helpful, but they're limited. If you then begin to take those basic premise and expand them to connect with God and to connect to another dimension, then you're going to really be limitless. Whereas, people talk about limitlessness, but they're not. They're not limited. They're not limitless. They're limited because they're only confined to what is knowledge which exists, rather than the omniscience of God, which is beyond what man necessarily knows, but can connect to. So you can learn, and I was looking at this the other day. Someone sent me a link to this thing and said, "Oh, what do you think of this?" Because we're talking about, the latest blog post was about creating reality and all this stuff. And I'm doing a conference, the last intensive is about deconstruction of the mind and expanding reality. So someone sort of sent me this link, and I thought I had to listen to it. And it was a nice guy, and he'd learned some techniques. And actually I thought, and he did a 6-stage meditative technique that you could do in 15 to 20 minutes, and it would just bring you to that place of, positivity about your day. So I listened to it and I thought, this is really good. But then I thought, well, actually, you do this all the time. You just haven't put it together into a 6-stage meditative state. To actually help people to learn how to do it. It's just how I live. And I never really thought about it as a process of, engaging a meditative state and consciousness and levels of consciousness. I just live in a place of rest. So I thought, maybe I'll actually pull all this together and actually say, hey, here's how you can engage with love, joy, and peace. And this is how you can get vision for your day. And this is how you can frame your day. And this is how you can be connected to a power source which will empower you to outwork your day in a way. So when I do the intensive, I'm probably going to do a session on, look, here's something basic that you can just do quite quickly to center yourself connected to God and be able to connect your consciousness in a way which is not what can happen during the normal meditation. But, I think there's a lot we can do, but we need to be at rest. It's absolutely vital we learn to live from rest, because then you can start to choose things, like choosing a plane to travel faster than the speed of light or whatever, which is what I've done, and I've chosen things like that because the present reality didn't align with my mandate for love, joy, and peace in my day and rest. And this was creating a non-rest state. So I'm going to change it. I'm going to choose to change it. I'm not going to accept that I'm going to be late for a flight, or I'm going to be late for a connecting flight, or I'm going to be locked in, or whatever it might be. So instantly, a reality forms in my mind, and I choose it. That's what happens. It's not like I've got to try and dredge something up. It's just like there's all sorts of infinite possibilities here, and one of them seems to draw me, and I choose it. And then sometimes I just rest in that because I've just chosen it, and sometimes I then do something on the basis of what I've chosen. So, examples of this would be, God gives me opportunity to do this when I fly places. So I'm flying to a place, like last year I went to New Zealand. I'm flying to New Zealand. We take off an hour late, and I have an hour layover to get the next flight. So I'm going to miss it, naturally speaking. But I'm in rest because I believe God doesn't intend me to miss it, and I don't. I want to be there on time. I have a mandate to go to New Zealand to speak. So, I don't want to cause anyone any problems. So I then, from a place of rest, no concern, no worry. Oh no, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to contact them. How am I going to contact them? Oh no, I'll have to phone them from Singapore or Hong Kong, wherever it was. It's like that. If you do that, you're not in a place of rest, and you're trying to come up with a solution which will always be based on what you can accomplish, naturally speaking. But I wasn't, and I was like, okay, the reality is we're gonna get the connecting flight. And at that point, it could have been that outworked from, hey, we had a tailwind, and we get there on time, because over a 17-hour flight or whatever, you can make up a fair bit of time. You have to burn a bit more fuel, but you can make up time. So I was just thinking, okay, I'll leave it up to whatever works out, but I'm going to get there on time. So then an hour or so into the flight, the co-pilot comes on and says, okay, we're really sorry that we took off late. There was an issue with this. We were hoping to make up time, but we've got a really strong headwind. We won't be able to make up time. We'll advise you later about what you're going to do about connecting flights. So then I thought, now I know what the problem is. So now I can choose the reality that corrects that problem. So I thought, wind, changing the wind. Okay, I know an angel called Winds of Change. So I'll connect with the Winds of Change, and I'll ask the Winds of Change to effectively change the wind. And that's what I did. Simple as that. Went back to resting and watching my movie, And so then the guy comes on an hour or so later and says, oh, we've had a miraculous change of wind, and we now have got an extremely strong tailwind, and we'll be hoping that we'll be able to make up the time. And in fact, we got there well in time, So if you're at rest, you can just begin to instinctively choose things out of the possibilities that existed. Because I could have chosen a different way. I could have chosen, okay, well, we're actually going to travel that distance in less time, or the time we've got is going to be expanded to enable us to get there on time. I could have chosen all sorts of different ways of doing that, because many ways exist, but I didn't. I actually chose the one that came to me first, which was, hey, just get the wind to change then, which is what I did. And I've had similar things in other situations where, I had a choice. I could choose to accept what is being stated, and therefore whatever I have to do to sort that out, I'll have to do, or I can choose a reality which will not be in agreement with that, but will change it. And, I've done that numerous times, and sometimes I don't feel any need to change it. And this is where you've got to be in a place of peace and rest, because don't make an assumption that you've got to change something just because that's the obvious answer. So, you know, I remember actually when I was in Canada last year, and I went to Toronto, and I got the connecting flight from Toronto to Winnipeg, and I got there on time, no problems, and I was standing waiting for the baggage retrieval thing because you had to go and change the bags because I was doing an internal flight. So I was waiting there, and I was waiting there, and it was taking a long time, and it wasn't coming off. And then I thought, oh, this is taking a long time. And at that point, I felt completely at rest to wait. I didn't feel I needed to expedite the time. I just felt, okay, no, I'll just wait. And by the time that came off, which was an hour late, then I missed getting that baggage onto the next flight. So, but I went out to the desk and I said to the people at the desk, look, the bags didn't come off the previous flight. They said, oh, no problem. We'll put you on the next flight. So I said, well, when's the next flight? Oh, it's only an hour and a quarter. So I thought, oh, it's not too bad. So I contacted Helen in Winnipeg, said, look, I'm going to be an hour and a quarter late. And then I got rid of the bags, you know, and went to the gate, in which I sit down and there's this lady there who engages in a conversation, which turns out to be, you know, she's a scientist, and we had an amazing conversation about quantum physics. And she said, well, what are you doing in Canada? Well, I'm going to do, I thought, and again, this is where you can choose. I could have said, oh, I'm going to do a Christian conference. But I said, actually, I'm going to go and speak at a conference in which we're talking about using the power of quantum reality to change our consciousness. And she was like, wow, that's a really interesting subject. So we had an hour actually conversing, and I, you know, eventually brought the whole thing that I'm doing this from a Christian perspective, that actually we as sons of God has the power to do this, that we can, it was great. Now that was, God wanted me to be on that flight because that was a divine appointment which he engineered for me. Now, if I had short-circuited that by saying, right, I want my baggage now, then I would have missed that opportunity. And I wasn't frantic or concerned or worried. I was really relaxed, which meant she felt relaxed around me because I was not giving off negative vibes. So I had the conversation. So in a sense, you know, you have to be sensitive to what's going on and what's going on around you and how you need to respond. And I find that becomes very instinctive. You just know how to respond, how to react into that situation, what to do without having to sort of, oh no, I need to, what am I supposed to do? And I'm trying to work it all out. And, you know, just because I'm connected to theta waves, my consciousness is connected to a flow of revelatory information, which inspires me effectively. That's how it works for me. Now, it may work differently for other people, I don't know. But for me, that's it. And if I'm living from rest, that flow is really easy. If I'm not living at rest, that flow becomes blocked. Because rest is what connects me to that realm. You know, so it is, I mean, it's quite an interesting way of, you know, living, because you just can, you know, just waltz through life without sort of, you know, getting all frantic about anything, just coming from a place of continual rest.
So just to sum it up, if I understand this correctly, you actually are in you're in that state of delta waves rest through your day.
Yeah.
And you're choosing your possibilities, regardless of what's happening around you at times. And theta waves are invading into your delta waves, and you just go.
Yeah.
And that's walking in the spirit.
Absolutely. That's walking in spirit. And in a sense, I can be also connected to the intuitiveness, because sometimes the creative solutions are within me. You know, that they're in the who God made me to be. So they're within my redemptive gift and everything. And I can tune intuitively into some of those things sometimes. So it's not just one way. There can be different ways that it functions, but the best way is obviously to get it direct from the source. So it's a flow of revelation that comes out of the heart of God. But there's different ways of learning. I wouldn't try and encourage people to try and connect with the mind of Christ or something in heaven when they've never been there. So it's better to start to connect initially with, well, slow down your brain, start to connect to a deeper level of consciousness, and start to learn how to draw from another creative source, because that's where you start. So people can learn to be mindful. They can learn to just, hey, when something's going on, I'm just going to slow down, center themselves, all sorts of different names for it. But essentially what it does, it connects them to more of the creative, intuitive side of them. And actually it's much easier when you're connected to that for you to be able to connect to God's creativity, and everything else.
Mike, how does the faith align with that? I remember the old faith movement. To me, if I think back, we talked about it, at least when I was in it, it was actually faith in ways of just declaring all the time, trying to change reality. But how does faith align with that? Faith that's talked about in the New Testament with waves.
Well, it just feels like you're at rest. Just that's what it feels like. It just feels like when I go to sleep at night, I deliberately engage. So I engage my soul in rest, not sleep, because I don't want my soul to then start spilling stuff out. Like most people's dreams are outworking of the stuff in their soul that they've got no avenue to express. I want to go to sleep physically, but I want my soul to be at rest. So I engage in the garden of my heart with Psalm 23, the Good Shepherd, and by quiet waters and in green pastures, and I can have my soul restored. So literally every night, I'm like, okay, I'm just come to a place of rest so that you can restore my soul. And my spirit is like, hey, I'm available for anything you would like me to be involved in tonight, and I'm just going to put my body into delta wave sleep, but all I'm doing is aligning my body with where my mind already is, if you know what I mean. I'm aligning my body with my mind, so my body then and literally I just go like that. It's just like it's very, very rarely do I ever get beyond a minute having gone to bed and placed myself in rest, do I find I'm thinking about anything. And if I am thinking about it, I've learned to then put that into the place where my soul needs to be restored, or I need to connect up to, a source which will bring me that, so then I can have my spirit or the Holy Spirit engaging me. I don't have dreams. I don't dream, because that rest state is a state where it's dreamless. That's what it's supposed to be, dreamless sleep. You get dreams, you usually get at different levels of consciousness when you're going in and out of that state. And, when you wake up in the morning, that's the best time to meditate, because your mind is already at that point where it's just coming. It's not yet beta state function. It's in that semi thing. And people who teach the techniques try and get people to get into that semi sort of awakened state that they can connect to more visual, creative senses. So, they'll be sort of like, think of your day. And it's like, get to that place where you can just start dreaming about your day and start to really think about, wow, how well your day is going to go. And essentially it's the power of positive thinking that they're trying to connect their mind to something good. Now, if they do, it's much more likely to be good than if they don't, but that's only a limited way of doing it. I don't want to have to try and go into some semi-dazed state to be able to make a decision whatever. So I've sort of learned to try and just live from that perspective. Now, you don't always. Sometimes, sometimes things happen, and it was like, whoa! It sort of hits you, and you're like, oh, that's a shock, or that was where did that come from? And then you then got to choose: am I going to allow that to cause me to waver from my place of rest, or am I going to then engage my place of rest and then look at how I see that from that place of rest? Because it's the perspective you're looking at, really, which will determine how you react to any situation. And if you react out of the situation itself, then you can end up fear or worry or anxiety or any of those things. But if you're like, no, is this going to affect my rest? No. Therefore, I'm going to see this from a place of rest. Therefore, I see, okay, well, I do this, or I do that, or I won't do anything. Just because you're seeing it from a different level of consciousness. And Einstein said, we'll never fix the problem with the same level of consciousness that created it. And that's the truth. That's why we go through all our DIY solutions of trying to fix something with the same consciousness that created the problem in the first place. And you won't. You've got to get something which is creative beyond that, either drawing from that which was within you, or drawing from the omniscience of God Himself, and having that flow of life which comes. Yeah. But most Christians aren't mindful. That's the problem. They don't get to a place of rest very often. They're always trying to figure it out or sort it out, or they're too busy, or it's always, sort of activity which is disturbing rest, rather than living from rest. I mean, Jesus said, all those who are weary and heavy laden, come to me and find rest. Well, why were they weary and heavy laden? Well, because they were doing stuff independently of Him in their own strength, trying to figure it out, trying to solve it. Whereas He said, well, come to me, take my yoke upon you. So here's the relationship now. Now we're joined together. We're connected. We're in relationship. He's the Prince of Peace. So, hey, I'm connected to peace, wholeness, and then from that perspective, it's like, well, what did He say? Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. So here's the key to the whole passage. Learn from me, because I am gentle and humble in heart. And that is the key to rest. It's knowing who you are, knowing the power and the authority of sonship, but being completely surrendered to only wanting to do what you see the Father doing, and having a full sense of identity, value, worth, and not having to do anything to try and earn it. So humility is just an acceptance of who God says we are, and without having to try and do anything to earn that from God, or in any way. Just, well, this is who He says I am. I'm accepting that. And then you that is the rest that comes, because you're not active trying to create something, do something, make something happen. You just, from that place of learning how He did it. How did Jesus only do what He saw the Father doing? How did He have everything He needed to enable Him to do everything that He saw the Father doing? Because He was in that place where He knew His strength, He knew His identity, He knew His authority, He knew His position, and He just came out of that place, totally accepted who God called Him to be, who He was, from that relationship with God, the Father that He had. Because that's what He said, I'm the Father of one. It's like, we don't do things independently. I don't do things out of my own accord. We do things together. Like the walking in the garden. It's like Adam walked in the cool of the day, or in actual fact, walked in the Spirit. That's what it was really saying. Walked with Ruach, which is feminine. So it's like, oh, his father and mother, and I'm just walking in the garden with them. That was complete rest. It was just, we're walking in fellowship, in relationship. We're just at rest. And that's really what He wants us to do today. Walk with Him in that, and be yoked to Jesus, in that we don't have to do this independently. It's all who He says we are that matters. And that's where the key comes in. Oh, the world says you can't do that. Well, what does God say? That's where our first thing could come from. I was in a situation where some things had happened, and it was not a good situation, and several people were saying to me, well, that you really aren't going to be able to repair this. You're not going to be able to fix this. This is it. That's the end of it. And that's what they were saying. And they were like negative, doom and gloom, negative. So immediately you get a choice. Are you going to agree with that? Or you're not going to agree with it? So my immediate reaction was, in my mind, I didn't have to say anything out loud, and I didn't have to get into any disagreement with them. My immediate reaction was, I'm not choosing that reality. The reality I'm choosing is this is going to be restored. I choose the reality for restoration in this situation. So then it was like, okay, what do I need to do? Is there anything I need to do? Yes. Go and do this, this, and this. Okay, I'll go and do that, that, and that. Now, is there anything I need to do? No, just wait now. Just wait and let that outwork. And I did. And situation got resolved, better than ever before. And it was just like, yeah, I'm not going to be subject to someone else's limitations. I can choose realities which are not the same as that. So, yeah. Anyone else got anything they want to throw into that, or ask anything different?
Living now, isn't it?
Yeah. Because essentially, it's all now to God. That's why nothing is ever unsolvable, because it's not the end of the situation. It's just always the new beginning to the situation. This has happened. Is that the end? No, it's still now. So what needs to change that? And, well, whatever. Because within God, every possibility for bringing something good out of every situation exists. I just have to choose one. And that's really what it's about. It's just choosing to align myself with the heart of God and the mind of God, and actually choose based on the fact that he's love. I'm making choices based on his love. So does he want anything to harm me? No. Why? Because he loves me. God works all things together for good. So who are those who are living in God's love? So it's living in the love of God. That's which really brings, that place of rest, love, joy, peace. That's what Jesus said. When he was here, love one another like I've loved you. So the world will know you're my disciples by your love for one another. So it was a very real expression of how they felt love. They could love. That was the first key. The second key was, my joy is in you, so your joy can be full. So you don't have to live a life which is moaning and groaning and complaining and miserable and under circumstances. Your happiness, is bound by your circumstances. Your joy is not. So my joy's in you. So whatever situation we face, we can choose to align with that joy that he's placed in us. And our joy then can be in full and overflowing because we're in alignment with that joy. And the third thing is peace. My peace I leave you, not as the world gives peace, but this is peace which goes beyond understanding, because I've left this for you. Do not let your hearts be troubled, was where he started off, and actually, well, why would our hearts be troubled? Well, because we weren't living in peace, so we're angry with someone, or we're upset with someone, or we're frustrated with someone, or we allow people and situations to remove our peace. So whenever I meditate to come into love, joy, and peace, I'm actually practically engaging first love, allowing the love of God to fill me, resting in the arms of love, letting that love just pour down from the top of my head all the way over my physical body, fill my soul, and flow out then I'm going to release that love as an atmosphere into the world. That's where I start. And then I'm then going to start to engage joy, which is I am going to focus on that which I can be thankful, be grateful, and center my thinking in gratitude and thankfulness. So I'm going to thank God for all the amazing things he's done, who he made me to be, and if people can't, I could spend all my time just thanking God. It shouldn't be easy to find something to thank God for. And if you start thanking God for something, you're not complaining or groaning or moaning about situations in life. You're being thankful. And then I focus on peace. So is there anyone I need to forgive? Is there anyone I need to ask forgiveness of? Is there anyone I need to ask to forgive me? So I'm going to think of that. And I start thinking about situations around me. Is there anyone that I've not really dealt with? Or am I annoyed with anybody? Has someone upset me? So if there's anything which is disrupting my peace, I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to choose to forgive them and release them and bless them. Now, sometimes nothing really comes to mind. So it's like sometimes I don't feel any sense of disturbance in the force, around me. I just feel, hey, everything's okay. It's all good. I don't think I've got anything that I've got an issue with. So great, I just carry on. But sometimes I always give God the opportunity. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me. Put my thoughts on trial. In other words, test and see whether actually I'm at peace and rest. Show me if there's anything in me which is a hindrance. So that's the sort of living sacrifice attitude of life, really, where it's like I'm continually presenting myself before him that if there's anything which is going to be a hindrance, then he can show me. And I can connect to that. Now, once I'm in that place of love, joy, and peace, then I can look at, well, what's my day like? I'm now resting in the fact that God has got a whole load of stuff for me to do this day, that I have a mandate for this day. I have a destiny to fulfill this day. So I'm going to then start to rest in that. I may get some specifics of what that is. I may not. But I know his heart. I know his heart for me in that day. So I only do one day at a time. I don't think about tomorrow. And I definitely don't think about yesterday. It's today. So today has got everything I need, fresh mercies for me today. All the grace I need today. Everything I need today. And I think about that, which brings me a sense of peace, joy, love, because it's like, today's going to be a good day. I'm going to have a really good day today. Everything is going to be aligned today to work out as God really intends me today. So I'm visualizing my day. It's a good day. It's a happy day. And actually, sometimes I even think about it in song. Oh, happy day. And actually I feel, hey, I'm happy because I'm already anticipating the good day that I'm going to have. And then I go and frame it. So I've received my mandate and destiny, and I'm going to frame it. Is there anything I need to do to bring order into this day that needs to put this into the right place? Do I need to call anything forth? Do I have all the provision I need for today? What do I need? Do I need to make some declarations that will align with this day being a good day for me? And sometimes, yeah. So I have an expectation. I have all that I need to fulfill all I'm called to do today. I have all the resources. And then I usually finish with, and I'm joined to the Lord in one spirit with him. So I am blessed. I'm empowered to prosper and to succeed to the highest level today. I have everything I need. I have all the grace and mercy available to me. I have everything in terms of the authority as a son to enable me today to fulfill this that I have a destiny for. So then all the flow comes out of my relationship with God. I'm not having to then, well, where am I going to get the resource for today? Where's this coming from? I'm blessed. I'm blessed and highly favored. So every day I connect to the blessing and highly favorability of God, if you like. and I live from that place where I am blessed and highly favored. So no, if anything tries to hinder or create a problem for me in that day, I'm an overcomer. I overcome it. I rule. I subdue it, and I bring back to place of rest. So something's trying to disturb my rest and peace. I don't just sit back and wait, let it happen. I take authority over it, and I stop it. Now I don't stop it ahead of time. I don't want any problems today, because actually that doesn't give you any opportunity of overcoming and ruling. So you learn to grow through dealing with situations that happen, but you deal with them in a place of complete rest, not from any sense of panic or anxiety or fear or worry or, oh no, this has happened. Now, you have to practice a lot to sort of get to that state. It's like, I didn't know any of that when I first started. And, I would be like everybody else, up and down and trying to deal with this and trying to sort that, because I just didn't know, I didn't know my identity. And then I didn't know my position. So I wasn't in that place of rest, seated. I was running around like everyone else, trying to deal with all this stuff. But my relationship with God drew me to that place where, hey, it's great here. And what does that mean in practice? This is not just I have this amazing heavenly encounter, but actually this makes a difference to how I live. And then applying it to everyday life became something that I just learned how to do. Once you can be continually in that place, flowing from that place of now, then it's so much easier than having to go there and try and find out what the situation is and then come back out. Just be in there, because we're in him. In him we live and move and have our existence. We're in him. But most people don't live like they're in him. They live like they're in a world of chaos and disorder. Whereas I live in a world of now. So never any chaos or disorder, because now can sort out everything, because it's all now. Anyway, yeah. Anything else? Anyone got anything else they want to talk about, to ask?
Mike, you have only 2 minutes, so I don't know whether...
Well, I've got longer than 2 minutes, but I don't know if you've got more longer than 2 minutes. But
so, the intention of the heart, as a man thinks in his heart. I received correspondence from the Heart Math Institute.
Oh, right, yeah.
And they say that it's actually the heart has a complete mini brain that actually affects the brain. And the heart produces an electromagnetic field that extends to about 7 feet around us. And it also affects people, because they measured the brain waves of children and pets. And it changes when they have 2 states, actually. They say the heart is coherent or incoherent.
Yeah.
One is a peace, joy, and one is chaotic. And they say when a person that is coherent comes into proximity with even pets and children, it changes their brain waves. So this actually affects people around us. So the intents of our heart also affect atmospheres and people. And so the intention, if we understand the intention of God's hearts, somehow there's a flow that even actually comes to us and flows out.
Yeah, it does. And there's a one of that is they've tested that there are neurological cells in not just the mind or the brain, but in the heart and in the gut. So there's one thing is like we have 3 brains that function in connected to one another. Some of the instinctiveness is neurological. We talk about gut instincts, don't we? And actually, the lining of the gut actually has neurological cells. The heart really does. And that's why the heart provides an EM field bigger than the brain. because actually that's our consciousness is actually the heart, not I'm not talking about just the physical organ, but obviously the whole connection around it. But physically, there is neurological cells within the physical makeup of the heart. But it is, in a sense, the intention of the heart where we're, are coherent. We are at peace. That's really what it really means. We're not frantic. We're not emotionally charged, negative, anxious, worried, all those things. So the three minds work together, and we're a whole person, and our consciousness is a connection to all of those. And some people would say that the unconscious mind is more of the instinctive stuff that we don't have to think about, but just happens. But it's actually still neurological in its way of operating. And we have the subconscious mind, which was the storage of everything, our memory and everything stored, and the conscious mind. And most people function from the conscious mind, which is triggered by things that happen, which bring up memory. And then you react out of the memory of your previous experience of a situation. And so most people function from that. And if your heart is full of things, the mouth speaks from the overflow of the heart. And generally it speaks negatively, unless the heart is full of love. And then what we speak is in alignment with that coherent love, joy, peace that we live in rest, because coherence really is rest. And incoherence is lack of rest, usually anxiety, So yeah, absolutely. And, again, we need to make sure. Proverbs 4 talks about guarding your heart or protecting your heart, for from it flow the springs of life. So everything really comes out of our heart and what's in there. As a man thinks in his heart. Well, what do we think? Do we agree with God in our heart, or is our heart programmed by our life? By our memories, by our trauma, by our experiences. Have we been programmed through nature, nurture, and trauma that we just live from all of those things rather than the peace and rest that comes from living in a heart to heart, which is why cardiogenosis, the heart to heart connection with God, actually affects our heart and will affect, as you say, other people. When you're living from a place of rest, you effectively can change the atmosphere of the things around you. And when you're at rest, I don't walk into a room and think, oh, I'm going to be affected by the atmosphere. I walk into a room and think, I'm going to bring peace into this room. I'm going to bring a sense of rest in this room. I'm going to bring that place. Now, I'm not perfect. Sometimes you don't get it right all the time, and it's a learning process. But I'm aware. Being consciously aware is important. Not just going through life, just being up and down, in and out, tossed around by everything that goes on, but being connected and solid, to the rock, who's immovable. The wise man built his house on the rock, and when the storms of life came, because they do, his life didn't collapse, because it was built on something solid. And that's why we really need to know who we are in relationship with God, and that brings us that place of solidity in knowing the reality of our identity. And then nothing that happens can change our identity, because we know who we are, because we are who God says we are. Yeah.
So when Jesus said that, whoever believes in me, rivers of living water will flow from within me, was he referring to this flow of electrons from us?
Well, yeah, he was talking about the spirit, but the spirit is energy. The spirit is life. The spirit is rivers of living water. The spirit is the spring of life. So he was talking about the energy that is creative within God himself that can flow through us. So yeah, that's the key. that we can be intentional about it, that we can flow. You know, I choose to see heaven flowing through me. I'm a gateway of heaven. Therefore, I've got the river of life. Therefore, I'm going to deliberately flow love into my atmosphere, joy and peace into my atmosphere. Therefore, when people come close enough to me, they should sense a place of rest. And that's like animals are sensitive to it. Animals are sensitive to frequencies that human beings aren't. And some animals get agitated when people are afraid. You know, and some animals will attack when people are afraid because they're feeling fear. And they're responding because they're feeling and sensing fear. You know, whereas if actually we're at rest, they don't sense that fear, and they're much less likely to, unless they've got, you know, their own issues going on. But, you know, but generally speaking, you know, the way in which we interact with the world around us can effectively bring that peace and harmony to the world around us and to other people. And when they're out of sync with that, we can interact with them and actually start to engage them with peace and rest and joy and love in that way. So, all right. Okay. All right, then I'll leave it there.